I appreciate the introduction. Unfortunately, you've taken all of my time. But we expected it. You're really sweet, and I should have been sweeter to you than I was right there. It is great to have my favorite child here. I was his favorite dad until today, and I brought him here. I asked him if he wanted to get lunch. He said, sure. I said, you want to go by McDonald's? He goes, sure. And we did. We drove right by it. And whipped into the parking lot. He goes, where are we? And I said, just keep your head down and smile and shake hands a lot. So far, so good. Steve always called me the golden child, and he's right. But this one, do not tell your siblings. This is being recorded, isn't it? It's actually going on live. Edit out the part where he's okay. You're my favorite one here. And I say that because he's a sweetheart, but also he is my retirement plan. He loves to play golf. And the stinker is good at it. And I need him to get great at it really soon, because I'd like to reiterate, that is my retirement plan. There is nothing else. That's it. No pressure. But we're leaving here at 1:15 and going to hit golf balls. I just want to make sure. And you hit them straight or you're walking home. And Bentbrook is a long way from Hoover. It is really sweet of y'all to ask me to be here. Had me here a couple of times. I have wound up in the hospital shortly thereafter twice. If it happens again, I love all of you, but I ain't coming back, even if I can. Enough is enough, and we'll go from there. But man, is it neat. I see so many of you that I have known my whole life. So many of you, and it is part of what makes it so neat to walk in with HUD. I go, I know you don't know any of these people, baby, but they have known me since I was younger than you. I don't know if I told the story of James Owens before and getting to meet James Owens for the first time a few years ago. But if I did tell the story, I don't remember it, and probably none of y'all do either. That's the nice thing of us all being north of 50 now. We can go ahead, oh, I never heard that before, even if you have. And I also have two other excuses with the health stuff. So I'm playing that. My wife goes, look, it's been 3.5 years. You can't play the stroke card anymore. Keep on, but I'm not buying it. So
Bracelet with my name on it.
there it is. It's spelled right? It's good. So I am having the opportunity, this has been probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even 8. But I used to work what they called the press box stage at SEC Fan Fair. That was the fan event in the Georgia World Congress Center, right next to, back then, the Georgia Dome, that they would have the day before the SEC championship game. Any Tennessee fans in the room? I wouldn't admit it either. You got Tennessee fans? I just need to explain. The SEC championship game is a game y'all used to play in a long time ago. That was for Paul Lawson. I'm sorry. Forgive me and thank you for being a good sport. I'm sorry. Any Mississippi State fans in here? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Anyway, tell the Ole Miss fans because they've never seen it before. Anyway, we're at the World Congress Center and they bring in former SEC players, SEC legends, and each year one of the great things the league does is to honor a different legend from each school for that particular year. Well, it's been 7 to 10 years ago, however long ago it was. James Owens was the honoree for Auburn. And normally I would meet most of these players, these legends, just before I go up on stage. Before we all went up on stage and there was a dais there, I would interview them and then we'd take questions from the audience. Really, really neat event. I was so excited because I'd never met James before. Heard about James. I was born in 70. Of course, he finished in 69, I guess, with Steve, 68, 69 with Steve. And I see him, and of course, James at that time was in declining health, but he was still sharp, had great conversation. But I said, James, you don't know me, but I've heard about you spoken reverently in my home my entire life. I said, my family grew up in Fairfield, and my brother was your teammate. He said, who's your brother? I said, James, I'm Steve Stewart's little brother. He goes, you're Steve Stewart's little brother. Where did you come from? I said, my daddy asked the same question. That is one of the neatest things for me in what I do, is that I've had the opportunity to get to know so many of my parents' friends, so many of my brother and sister's friends that you literally have known me my whole life. And whether it's in this room, and there are a few, Dr. James, great to see you. Really good to see you. Friends of my parents. So many of you, again, I've known my whole life, or you've known me my whole life. But the fact that I've gotten to know so many of you, and yeah, you are my siblings' friends or my parents' friends, you're my friends now. And boy, there's some guys I'm looking at in here, and ladies, that came to see me when I was really sick, and spent a lot of time looking out for me, taking care of me, and you don't know how much I appreciate you. Y'all are absolutely awesome, but you know what? You're Fairfield people. There's not part of it that surprises me or has ever surprised me in the least. We did go to Montevallo. Forgive me for a second. We did go to Montevallo about a month ago, and it was a neat event for me to go for the Hall of Fame. Apparently, they had put everybody in that had ever been involved in Montevallo athletics. At any point, I was the last one out. I had to turn off the lights. But it was really special. Really, really neat to have a chance to go back. But I'm driving through this little town. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Montevallo. Y'all thought Montevallo is still Gary Avenue, as many of you remember it. Is that a fair assessment? Is that a good comparison? You can practically hear the Andy Griffith theme song when you drive down Main Street in Montevallo, that's what it's called, is Main Street. And they've done a beautiful job of basically merging finally the campus with downtown, which is only about a 2-block max separation. But it's just a beautiful little area. It's not for everybody, but it was absolutely for me. And to have a chance to go back, but I'm driving through and I'm starting to tell the story, and very respectfully, but pretty dadgum funny, the 16-year-old who is looks like Steve, acts like me and Steve, which is horrifying. I see some of you shaking your heads. Tommy Ellison shaking his head like, God help Chris's wife, and I don't even know her. That's true. But he from the back seat goes, story time with Daddy. And he was right. It was neat for me to reminisce, but man, that is the way I still feel about Fairfield. I only went to Fairfield schools through 7th grade. I was at Forest Hills through 7th grade, and then I had a chance to go to Central Park Christian from day one when it opened. I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity. But Fairfield's still home. It's always been home. And even though very few of us probably in this room, if any, even live there again, still home. And when you mention Fairfield, yeah, there's a touch of sadness, but there's mostly smiles because we remember what it was. I've heard about what it was since I was a child. I got to experience some of it, but I've gotten to live it through my parents and my siblings and through the relationships that I've been able to build on my own since that time. Just special. And I realize that's like saying water's wet. I'm not telling y'all anything that you don't already know, but just from somebody who was maybe a half generation removed from some of you, it still is. And the memories are still special for me. It's why I'm here today. That, and you offered to buy me lunch, and I appreciate that. I got a 2-for-1 today. I got a 2-for-1. That was a big, big day for us. A couple of things I was going to just fill you in on before I take any questions, and we'll stay as long as you want to talk until they shut the door on us, whichever comes first. It has been a really interesting time, and I guess I was here right after the stroke. That's right. Wasn't here maybe in Pelham? Is that where we met? Yeah. Memory's better than you thought, because I couldn't have told you where I was that day, let alone where I've been. It was, I was given a BS degree from the University of Montevallo, and I do say give because I'm not real sure I earned it, and I'm not positive that stood for Bachelor of Science. My wife contends. My wife is not certain that that's what that was translation was, but regardless, I've got a piece of paper that says that. And I'll be honest, I had to bluff my way through for a little while. I'm doing a basketball game one day, and if I had either my contacts in, I would wear a patch over my left eye, or if I was wearing my glasses, they would call fogging the lens, which is a very nice, very expensive way for the hospital to say, we're going to stick Scotch tape over your lens. I realized that little trick they had and started fogging the lens myself without having to go in and have them do it. But my left eye muscle, it was a miracle when I had the stroke because, and I told you the story when I was here before, I'm not going to bore you with it again, but there was an inordinate amount of time. We don't even know exactly when I had the stroke. It was sometime between midnight and 4:30 in the morning when I went to sleep, and probably 11:30 the next morning that the clot was actually cleared. So it's a miracle that I survived, let alone that 11 months after that, I leave the Eye Foundation Hospital at UAB, or the Eye Foundation area at UAB, and the doctor says, hand me your glasses, and I do, and he took the tape off, and he had me read some things. And the reason I had the tape on there for so long, or wore the patch, is because the left eye muscle literally had a mind of its own for a long time. I was thankfully able to drive and get around, but I'll give you a prime example. I would go to merge or come to a intersection where I'm going to turn right, and I have to make sure it's clear. So I'm looking back to make sure that it is, and when it was clear, I would turn my head to be able to drive and turn the car right to turn into the intersection. Well, the muscle in my left eye was slower than the one on my right. So while my head and this eye were turning as they were supposed to, this one literally had a mind of its own, and it was taking its own sweet time to come catch up with the other. And I have to do this or some variation of that in order for the eyes to be in lockstep. You don't understand how amazing that is, that have the left eye and right eye work together until they don't. So there was massive appreciation. Some of you in this room probably know, but it was unbelievable. And most of the time, as the season wore on, that would have been April. Yeah, it was April. So as we got into basketball season, the start of it anyway, I was healed, but not completely. I still had the patch on the eye. One day I thought, I'm going to try it without it. I'm okay. I'm okay. And a shot went up from the right wing. And as I'm watching the flight of the ball, I suddenly realized there were 3 basketballs traveling towards the goal. And that's not legal in most states. And there were 3 balls. One that I saw hit the floor. Another one that I saw hit the top of the backboard. The one in the middle went through the net, Thankfully, it was our guy that shot it. It was John Petty. The crowd went nuts, and I waited a half second, and I went, bottom. And my broadcast partners didn't turn and look at me as if to say, what? So I just assumed that I got the one right. And from that point forward, if there was an issue, I just described the ball in the middle if I saw three. Tricks that you learn as you go along. So that was the stroke. Well, 11 months after the stroke, the doctor took my glasses and had me do the eye check and everything, and he said, let me see those, and he peels the tape off. He goes, you can keep it if you want it. He said, but you don't need it. He goes, you're cured, you're healed. And this is after he told me it was going to probably be 2.5 years, if ever, that I'd be able to see again. Clearly, normal function, if I'd ever get that back, it'd be 2.5 years. Well, 11 months later, I didn't need anything, and I was healed again. I carried around in my phone wallet, I carried that tape right here. 2 reasons. One, in case there were to be an issue and my eye got very tired and for whatever reason it stopped working, I could always peel that off, put it on, at least get home or get to where I could get some new tape or whatever. But it was my reminder of how good God is, that was there, and it's there, and it can stay there because I don't need that. It's there. So that was the stroke. 16 months later, this same man who saved my life when I had the stroke, Jay Sharma, it's actually Jatendra Sharma. He ain't from around here. He's from North Selma. No. He was, first time he told me his name, I said, what part of Selma are you from? He's from India. Great sense of humor. He fit in this group. Terrific. Phenomenal man. Became friends with him. In addition to him being my physician, going back for follow-ups, would reach out to him via text, call him, check on him, see how I do it. He would check on me. He started a new business venture that I went for a grand opening of his second facility. I see him there one day. He goes, you look great. How you feeling? I said, Jay, I feel great. One little odd thing, and it was roughly this time. It was this time 2 years ago, right at 2 years ago. He said, how are you feeling? I said, I feel great other than one little thing. He said, what's that? I said, Jay, every now and then, I said, about once a day, I said, I'll feel a little tingle, a little tightness in my arm. He goes, where? And I said, well, pretty much through here. He goes, through there? And I said, yeah. He goes, that's your heart. We got to get you in. I said, okay. Well, the next day, cardiovascular, they tell me that I'm going to be hearing from Cardiovascular Associates. We get on the horn, set it up for me to get the stress test. They do that after the results are over with and after I am sucking wind of 7 minutes on that treadmill. The doctor says, hey, come on in here, let's talk. And I know that ain't good. He goes, hey, first of all, Dr. Sharma is really good. I said, yeah, he is. What's going on? He said, we got an issue there. He said, one of 3 things. He said, could be a false read. I said, Doc, I had one of those about 9 years ago. He goes, yeah, it could be another false read. He said, but probably going to need to put a stent in. Could be stents that you need.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I'm sorry. That's my phone that talked to me. She's got a good voice, though. That's the reason I've got it set for that. He said, it could be nothing. It's probably you're going to need a stent. He said, or maybe, and you could tell he was hesitant to say it. And I said, could be bypass. I'm familiar with those in my family. My dad had one, my mother had 2. He said, yeah, he said, could be, but I don't think it's that. And I said, yeah, I'm probably going to need it. He goes, well, we'll see. So that was on whatever day of the week it was. We had it set up for about a week and a half later. Go in on a Friday. They're going to put the stent in. I do the thing. It's the arteriogram, I believe, is what it's called. There's a great story tied with arteriograms that I'm going to share, even with him here. Because again, who was it that said, there was somebody very, very sweet said, there's a child here. Ma'am, you understand, he's my child and Steve Stewart's nephew. It's incredibly sweet of you to look at, but I promise you, there's nothing she could say or he could say that sadly that he hasn't heard. I will still understand the room, and I will pass this along. But my mother had bypass surgery twice. She had the first one when I was 7 years old. She was 45. She had the second one when I was 17, my senior year of high school. She was 55. She died coming out of that surgery, as most of you know. Dr. Kirkland, who the clinic is named for, did both of her surgeries. She could not have had better care. It was time. It wasn't time in our eyes, but it was her time in God's eyes. To come home, and Lord knows, even at 55, nobody earned it more than Ann Stewart. So, we lost her that day, but I was familiar with the process because as she went through her bypass, went through her process, I had a friend who had given her a book. It was Louis Grizzard's book. They ripped my heart out and stomped that sucker flat. Any of you familiar with that book or the title? You know, for those of you that aren't familiar, Louis Grizzard, humorist, columnist, writer, hilarious, wrote this book which was twofold in its storytelling. One part was about his 3 different bypass surgeries that he underwent. The other was about the 3 failed marriages that he had undergone. Hence the name, They Ripped My Heart Out and Stomped That Sucker Flat. It had dual meaning to the two. Well, there were all these things in the book that my mother read leading up to her second bypass that were hilarious. Including, and she would laugh and I would hear her laugh, and she would either tell me or say, you can read it tonight when I go to bed. So I would. And there was one day in particular, she just cackled. Some of you here know my mother's laugh. I can still hear it too. But it was Ann Stewart's laugh. And I said, what is it? She goes, you read this one tonight. So sure enough, I did. And it was a chapter dealing with definitions of medical terms. The doctor says this, but this is what they mean. The doctor says you're going to feel a little sting when this happens. Translation, have you ever been bitten by a large animal? Referencing the arteriogram. Do this for me right here for just a second. Thank you, just for a second. They inject the dye in your groin. You'll feel a warm sensation. Translation, they're about to burn your testicles off. Off for a second. I read that night. I knew immediately what Mother was cackling about. God gives you moments. Some are big, and I have not even thought about this until now. I am so blessed. Not only did I have the parents that I had, in their final moments, God, I can't believe I hadn't thought about this till now. I got amazing moments with both my parents. With Mom, we have told her goodbye before she goes down for her bypass surgery. We don't know that it's truly goodbye, but we know that that's a possibility, and it turned out it was. But they wheeled her out after that and stopped at the nurse's station. Now, I was told later that never happens. When they wheel you out, you're just going straight to ER. But they stopped at the nurse's station, and I went down while she was there, took her by the hand, leaned down, kissed her on the cheek, whispered in her ear, I'll tell you later. Don't worry, Mom, the hard part's over. They've already burned your testicles off. My beautiful mom looked up at me and grinned, shook her head, and the last words I ever heard out of her mouth were, "Boy, you are something else." That was my last moment with my mother. I'm going to fast forward very quickly and then I'll come back to this part. I know y'all got stuff to do. And I've already ordered his food at McDonald's and it's going to get cold, so we're going to go back. My dad died in February, 91 years. Boy, he had a great run. And even though his body was failing him, by and large, it was LJ till the end. Good, bad, indifferent. It was LJ, and it was about 99.9% good. But he was battling at that time dementia, not full-blown Alzheimer's. He was still in a spot where he could communicate with you, and he would act like he knew you. Now, he did us and most of the people closest to him, but if he didn't, he bluffed really well. But on one of his final days, there were two things. I got to tell him goodbye on the air on a day that I thought he may be gone. My wife, we had all gone in. This is LJ. I got to tell this. I'm sorry. I drift off into these little sub-stories, but y'all know them, and this is what I want to share with you. I go to see him on what I think is probably going to be my last time to see my father. Turned out it wasn't, but I'm thinking as I go in, it's my last day to see my dad. We go in, he's in the hospital bed. They brought hospice in. He's in the room in his bedroom, and I come in and grab him by the hand, kiss him on the head. "Hey, bud, how you doing?" And he was so sweet. Especially, he knew what was coming. He talked about it. He was at peace with it. He knew where he was going. He knew it wasn't going to be long, but he was very much at peace with where he was going. Couldn't have been sweeter. "Bud, how you doing?" "Dad, I'm great." I said, "Look who I brought with me." And I had my wife and I had the boys. My daughter was still in school. She had been there a day earlier. She came back eventually, got to see him again. But right there. Now, Dad's met my wife many, many times. And he knew her. But don't ask me how I got this done. His mama, my wife, she's gorgeous. She is flat out gorgeous. Takes my breath away. Every time I see her, he knows I'm not bluffing. He sees me act like an idiot every time she walks in her room. Wow. A lot of y'all that know my dad, known him a long time. None of what I'm about to tell you is going to surprise you in the least. "Dad, Christy and the boys are here." And Dad had really not opened his eyes very much at this point. But he saw Christy. Suddenly Fairfield LJ was back. He opened those eyes. Wow. She's 5'1", about 95 pounds. About what my mama was when she was at Fairfield. And much as he said about my mother, he looked at her and went, "Wow, you sure are a pretty little thing." He turned his head back to where I was and he goes, "I tell you what, boy, you sure can pick 'em." So there was that. My wife the next day, when I'm doing a basketball game on radio, she goes, "Would you like for me to take the radio up to your dad so he can hear you?" I get emotional on this one because I knew this was the last time my dad was going to hear me call a basketball game. It may not be the last time he hears my voice, it may be, but it's the last time he'd hear my voice on radio. Something he took a lot of pride in. She tells me when they're there, texts me while I'm on air. Parker, his older brother, my middle child, I've got 3, amazing. He's 10, Parker's 16, Ann, my daughter, is about to be 21 in October. Crazy. Yeah, me too. Parker texts me and he goes, hey Dad, Mom's got the phone where you can listen to the radio basically through your phone next to G-Dad now. He's listening. And I got to say, it's great to have all of you listening on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, wherever you may be tuned in. Great stations around the state of Alabama and the Southeast, or maybe you're listening on the TuneIn radio app, as my father is doing right now, LJ Stewart. Hello, Dad. I love you. I got to do that one last time on the radio. It was really special, as you might expect. Parker sends me a text back immediately. He said, Dad, he has not opened his eyes. He has not said a word all day. He just opened his eyes and grinned when you said that and goes, hey, he just said my name on the radio. But the gift that God gave me that paralleled the one with Mother, that again, I had not even thought about this until just now. What turned out to be the next to last day before Dad died. I'm with him. I'm at his bedside. I'm holding his right hand with my left. The phone rings. LJ Stewart always had to know who it was on the phone or get up first to answer the phone. Even with hospice there, even with him literally on his deathbed, the phone rang and my stepmother, God love her, Angel, Dot Stewart, is going to get the phone in the other room, obviously. Dad still can't open his eyes, but he hears the phone ring. Dot, telephone, telephone. And I said, Daddy, she's got it. She's got it. And again, I've got his left hand, or excuse me, his right hand with my left as I stand here at his bedside. And I'm holding his hand, and he says it again, Dot, telephone. And I said, baby, and he's putting his left hand up. He's reaching for the telephone. I go to grab his hand, but instead of taking my hand, he took my wrist. How many of y'all used to watch the Carol Burnett show? Well, grew up on the Carol Burnett show. Tim Conway. Y'all know where I'm going. Oh, man. It's one of our favorite skits in my family. My dad grabs my wrist and starts pulling it towards his head. And I'm sitting there watching it going, oh dear Lord, this is about to happen. And it did. My father takes my hand, sticks it to his ear, and goes, hello. Grinned like I hadn't grinned in days. And I said, it's the wrong number, baby. Hang it up. He goes, okay. And hands me my hand back to hang up. So I got Louis Grizzard with my mother. I got Tim Conway, my father. And I got nothing by and large but greatness all throughout leading up to those moments with those two people. I am an incredibly blessed man. So, with the bypass, with Mother's background, long story short, very successful bypass at Brookwood Hospital. Had some great friends that came to see me. Had it on a Monday, went home on a Friday, felt great. Saturday, Sunday, went to church. Monday, Tuesday, had company over. Friends came over, dropped by to see. Not a lot, but people would drop by, check on. Friends came over Wednesday. 3 friends of mine from college at different stages of the day. The last one leaves my house at 7 o'clock. I have no memory for the next month. None. Zero. During that time, I was in a coma for 2 weeks. Developed sepsis, pneumonia, MRSA, rhabdomyolysis. Every organ in my body shut down. The doctors would tell me later, you were literally as sick as you could be without actually dying. And my response was, I have a long history of carrying things too far, so I'm glad for once in my life I didn't. The fact that I'm able to stand here and talk to y'all, I was in the hospital for 91 days. The second time. My second stay was 91 days. The fact that I'm able to stand here 21 months later, smile, work, recollect the stories that I've shared with you, and again, I'm from Fairfield with a Montevallo degree, so articulate may not be the right word, but the fact that I can articulate those to you, I knew Kyle would like that. The fact that I can remember them, no notes, the fact that I can articulate those, share those with you, that's my big word for the day, sorry. I'm really, really blessed. And I've heard people that are believers and those who are not use the word miracle, and I don't argue with them. It's been an amazing, amazing stretch. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. It's also the greatest blessing God ever gave me, because so many people have been and continue to be so incredibly kind to me. I can't even express. People I'm not at all surprised by, many of you in this room, but people I've never known in my life, people I've never met, calling, reaching out, telling me that they've prayed for me, all sorts of messages. And look, you know what I do with Alabama. I'm fortunate. Bama's got a huge reach. One of the most special nights of my life, and you know the night I'm talking about, you and Kyle, Auburn fans. At Auburn, I go back maybe February. February, after I had gotten out the day before Thanksgiving following my 3-month stay. And I'm back at work calling, if you can call what I do work, calling ball games. And Bruce Pearl had come over to see me before tip-off of the game in Tuscaloosa. 5 minutes from tip-off. He walks across the floor, comes over, speaks to me, shakes my hand, tells me, we've been thinking about you, we've been praying for you. We're so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're doing well. Fast forward to the game at Auburn, he sends out a t-shirt for me through the general manager of Auburn's radio network. He said, Bruce wants you to have this. He goes, no, look, he knows that you didn't have cancer, but his charity, his fundraiser is for cancer, and it's Outlive. It's something he did at Tennessee, but it's something he's carried over to Auburn. It's a promotion called Outlive Cancer. And he goes, it represents people who are fighters in the spirit of fighting, and he thinks you're a fighter and he wants you to have it. So when they came out for pregame introductions, I'm sitting in my broadcast position right next to the Alabama bench. And he's coming over to shake hands with Nate Oates, and before he can get to Nate Oates, he stops and shakes my hand and goes, did you get the shirt? And it's a blue and orange t-shirt with the AU logo, and it's Outlive Cancer. And I said, I got the shirt, but I can't wear that thing. And he laughed as you would expect him to laugh and shook hands, and he was great. But he was one of, look, I've over the years, I've gotten to know a lot of people at Auburn. Friends, people work in the athletic department. I had 30 people minimum, that I have never met in my life that are Auburn fans that came up to me and said, we're so glad you're here. We've been praying for you. It's great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Some variation of that. Minimum 30. That's not an exaggeration. That's just of the people I didn't know. What Alabama people did is what you might expect, but it was incredibly well appreciated, and it was off the charts, and it continues even today. People are great. People are very, very kind, and that includes all of you in this room. I've talked beyond the question and answer portion, or maybe into your next meeting. I don't know which it is. And I'm sorry, but I'm sure none of you that know me or any of my family members are surprised that I started talking and couldn't stop. If you want to visit, I'll be glad to, but I know a lot of you need to go or probably just want to get the heck away, and I don't blame you for that either. Anything?
Any questions?
Any questions? I'll be glad to make up an answer. Anybody other than Paul Lawson have a question? Yes, sir.
Do you use the Auburn shirt to wash the car now?
I have it in a very nice Auburn bookstore. I think it's actually, it's not Toomer's, Anders. Is that the bookstore down there? J&M or Anders. That it was given to me, and it's staying there for now. But it will not be desecrated. After I get Bruce to sign it, which I should have gotten done that night, but I told my wife, I said, I got to get it signed, and I got to get it framed, and I'm going to put that somewhere on a wall. But that one's pretty meaningful, along with a lot of others. The best part, I'll tell you this real quick. It was roughly coming up in about 2-3 weeks, maybe a little more than that. We'll tape the preseason edition of Coach Saban's TV show. Well, last year was my first time back. It was preseason. I was thankfully able to work last year. But the year before, we were supposed to tape the preseason version of his show on the Monday after I had bypass surgery on a Friday. Well, obviously I didn't get to go and do that. But the anticipation was I was going to be back for the start of the season because that's what I had been told. Well, then I developed the infection, got so sick, 91 days in the hospital. The only game of the regular season that I was out for was the Iron Bowl, and based on how that turned out, I wish to heck I just stayed in. And in fact, as that linebacker for Auburn took that pass off of Najee Harris's shoulder pads in the end zone and went 100 yards the other way, before he got to the goal line, I literally sat in my recliner and looked at my wife and I said, have I not been through enough? The only redeeming thing was the fact that I did not have to take any phone calls on a post-game show after that, nor did I have to talk to Coach Saban when that was over with. But I missed that year entirely from a football season standpoint, work standpoint. I didn't miss anything. We didn't win the national championship anyway. Something that I took great pride in. See, you missed me. So we go to do the preseason show right at 13 months ago now with Coach, and the guy goes, Coach, you know Chris, and glad to have him back with us. And he goes, yeah, man, it's good to see you. We sit there, and of course, we're right into the show, taping of the show, and we finish, and he takes the microphone off, and he sits up. He's sitting in a chair while I'm on the couch when we tape it. He takes the microphone off, hands it to one of the techs, and he sits up, and he looks at me, and he goes, what happened? Filled him in on the elevator version of the story, because he ain't gonna sit. In all the time I've done his TV show, I have spoken to y'all more today than I have collectively to that man in almost 10 years, or right at 10 years of doing his show. Maybe double, but that's part of it. He was among them, but people have just been wonderful. I'm very, very grateful to all of you. I know as you were going through your prayer list, I know that that's something that is not just said to keep up with people, but it's something that you actually do, and you do follow up on that. And I know I was on that list for a long, long time, and I'm extremely grateful, not just this, but for my whole life and my whole family, because you played a major part. You played a major part in me. Again, this is y'all's fault that I'm here. Because you impacted my family, which impacted my life. It's Fairfield. It's not Mayberry, but man, we'd have fit in great with those folks, wouldn't we? Thank you. And the only time they'll hear me say this, go Tigers.